This is a meeting of the Greenfield Public Safety Building Committee, and it's been conducted via the city's WebEx. The chair statement, this meeting is being recorded by the city. If any person present is recording this meeting, you must notify the chairperson at this time. Is there anyone on board here recording the meeting? Hearing none. We'll move to roll call. So I am present. Mayor, present.
I'm here.
Chief Strand,
Here.
present.
I'm recording this meeting.
Who's that?
In Grazik,
Okay, address, please.
88 Hope Street.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Amy McMahon. Present? Not present? Absent. Drackledge?
Here.
Present. All right. Herb Forgy?
Haven't seen Herb. Come on.
No. Okay, we can change it. Okay, Jen Stromston?
Here.
Present. Thank you. David Singer?
He's on. He was on.
He's on.
I see him. I can see him. Present. Gene Wall?
Here.
Present. Carol Collins?
Here.
Present. Liz Coleman?
Yep.
Present. Wow. David
You can do it.
Muscatello?
Present.
Present.
Scaratolo.
Scaratolo. Scaratolo. I'll have to,
He'll get it. He'll get it.
I'll get it.
Takes time.
Okay, so those are all the voting members. The non-voting members, Todd Andrews, but I believe he sent me a text.
Yes.
He's not going to be here.
Yeah, he did.
Absent. Chief Haig? Absent. Marla Warner is present. Mr. Vanderlander?
Mm-mm.
Absent. Laura Phelps? Laura Phelps? No?
Mm-mm.
Absent. Ed Jarvis?
Yep.
Present. Greg Evendorf? Absent. And Peter MacGyver?
Present.
So Liz Gilman are on. Which if I could, let me explain. I asked Liz to join. She felt like if she had a root canal today. She might show up and be listening, and if anybody has any questions that Liz might be able to answer, we'll take them down and you'll get your answers whenever we can get to them. But I told her she didn't have to talk.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for August 26th. I believe they were emailed out to folks.
So moved.
Second. Name in the minutes.
Was that David Singer?
Of course.
7.
Okay, any discussion on the minutes, prior minutes?
Yeah, I have a couple of changes. No, none of them are real biggies, but since this is a matter of public record, I thought it'd be important to make these changes. So people have the minutes in front of them, great. I can just tell you what they are. Then Peter can decipher. It's page 2. The what are we talking about here? The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 paragraph down says mayor. The temporary and permanent could be on the same site. Ellen Boyer is the Greenfield Public Library Director, not a member of the MBLC. And it is not, so it is not the N as in BLC, it is the M as in maybe BLC.
Okay.
The next paragraph is just a misspelling. Ed Jarvis recused himself due, and there's a change, to personal reasons. Personal connections in future, we'll do it before discussion begins. I think it's what it says. Last paragraph on that page, mayor, no coexisting, whatever that is. It's weird, and I get it. You know, these meetings, they were very thorough and they were fine. It's just that some of these things, they need to be a little clearer. No coexisting has been in the original planning, including money in the, well, that's right. That was incorrect. What I think I said, because that is what is the case. Coexisting has been in the original planning, including money in the library project budget. So scratch no and begin that sentence with coexisting. And that's a reference to coexisting for a period of time to the library. See that happening. The library and the fire station coexisting for a period of time while the fire station got temporary was built.
Okay. Would you like to make a motion to that effect, Mayor? Change the minutes?
Well, I'm not done yet.
Oh, you got more.
Uh-oh, Liz Gilman's joined us.
Okay.
I know by her laugh.
Yeah. Okay.
So on page 2, it starts more than halfway down the page. Chairperson Hawkins cannot sign contract with them, and it should be until, not will. On page 5, never mind, that's not correct. I mean, I'm mistaken. It was just a note to myself. And I think that's it, but let me just double check. That is the last page. That was it.
Okay.
Peter, because I could certainly fax you our scan and you might.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure I have all those written down, but if you could summarize them in an email, I'll make sure they're clear.
Okay, thank you.
So I think we need a motion to change the minutes as presented.
Okay, somebody's got, I think it's Herb. Herb has a telephone and his computer on at the same time.
Somebody's logged on twice.
It's Herb. He said he was having logging on.
Yeah.
Who is?
Okay.
That's good.
Yep. Back to the motion.
I'll do a friendly amendment to accept the minutes as corrected.
Is there a second? David, second.
Second.
All in favor?
We're open. Aye.
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 Aye. Do we have a unanimous vote on that? I think we do. It's hard to tell. It looks like it. Okay. All right. Is there a motion to accept the amended minutes for the previous meeting?
I just did that. I thought that's what we voted on.
We need
I
to
thought
vote,
you-
and we voted.
Yeah, I thought you, okay, as amended. Very good.
Yep.
Okay, the next thing is we'd like to take if there'd be a motion to, I think a lot of the stuff would fall in line, but prior to that, I think the mayor would like to make some comments, I believe. So if folks would, motion just to take the OPM presentation for budget request and additional project funding out of order, that would be great.
So moved, Trent.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Okay, Mary, you have the floor for,
Yeah, I'm actually, so anybody who isn't speaking, you could mute yourself, because I think we'll be able, Butch cut out a little bit there, so if you're not speaking, please mute yourself, and then when you want to speak, you can do that, but good. The chances of us cutting out while we're speaking will be less. I'm actually the one who asked for that redo because I thought it was important. We've had a lot of different things happen, most of them good, in the last few days. So I thought it was important that the OPM began the presentation of his slides, and I'm hoping that most of you got those slides today. I think they were emailed to you, and you've had an opportunity to look at them. But if you didn't get them, we are certainly open to, as is Neil, I am, and Butch, and whoever, Chief, are open to questions. And we have made some changes in order to make the budget work a little better. We have chosen what we think would be a very good temporary site that is on city property. And Dennis Ross is on here tonight because he does have a slide in this presentation. And if you have questions for him on how that will work, then, he's here to answer those questions. So I think I'm happy. I think it's going to be a good meeting. I want everybody to have an opportunity to discuss everything that's on this agenda if you want. If you have things that you want to offer, or you have questions, or any of those things, please feel free to either put them in the chat, or ask to be recognized, or raise your hand, or whatever you need to do. And between Butch and perhaps we can corral everyone. So I see Ed has his hand up, Ed. Unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to, I did talk to the State Ethics Commission lawyer today, as we discussed the other day. I do have to recuse myself from any conversations, so I'm going to do that at this time. And I also found out that I shouldn't be sending just updates to the city council. So I'm going to be asking that note. Yeah, he said that I shouldn't be doing that either. We had a lengthy discussion today. So yeah, so I'm going to ask that somebody forward some kind of notes to the city councilors on this meeting, because I think it'll be important that the ones that aren't watching it at least know that, one, that it's been recorded, and two, they get some kind of just bullet points or highlights. I don't know if it's something Pete wants to do or what, but I cannot do that. So from here till we settle this part of it, I can't do that either. So I just thought I'd let you know.
All right. Bush, it's up to you. You want Pete to send that email, or do you want to, or?
yeah, Pete can send the minutes, plus you can make folks aware that the meeting's been recorded as well.
Yeah, and if you have there is a a link that shows up on, after it's, it's within a day or so of us ending the meeting. The link does show up on WebEx, and if you don't have access to that, Peter, I can certainly send you the link to that. Okay. So, Neil, do you want to try to begin the presentation and share your screen, or do you want me to do it? Yeah.
Nope, I think I can do it. I practiced yesterday.
Jesus Christ.
Everybody got it? Yes? No?
Yes. Yes, I'm
Perfect.
seeing it.
Perfect. So just by the way of reminder to everyone, the new fire station project does in fact sit on the same footprint as the proposed library project. Should not be new developments for anyone. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it. It's the same slide you saw at our update last month. In terms of where we are, we had received proposals for the temporary fire location to lease space for the city. Those were actually voted to pass on those options at our last meeting. We have also received 5 responses from multiple properties in the city to purchase for the long-term home for the permanent fire station. So what has changed since the last time we sat and gathered is a couple of developments and considerations that I think will change the way that we evaluate and look at the proposals for the permanent station. And in no particular order, they are, when we had originally issued the RFP and when we evaluated the responses, we evaluated based on utilizing the intended lot for both a public safety building, which would be comprised of a fire station and a police station. The city has advised that we should modify that to evaluate for a fire station only because of extenuating financial restrictions that would prevent the police station from being a reality until sometime after 2030. The second thing that has been new, I think we had touched on this last meeting. The Riddell Street site had intended to utilize an earmark of additional funding of $2.5 million from the state to assist in the remediation of that site. The city has advised that that grant has not progressed at the state level and will not be available to the city for use on the project. In the interim, since our last meeting, the city had an informational meeting, sit down with Berkshire Gas to discuss gas consumption on the Main Street corridor. And Berkshire Gas has advised that they will not permit any additional usage or consumption out of the gas volume that currently exists on Main Street. In their terms, it was a restriction on any increase in therms. So we've made that adjustment with the understanding that alternative or supplementary energy sources will be required at all sites to provide heating, most likely for the apparatus bays within the facility. Since we last met, the city did make a proposal and an offer on the Wells and Main combination site, which was what we had voted to proceed with at our last meeting. That proposal has not been received, or I should say has not been acted upon by the current owner. So we are considering that our offer was rejected. And finally, in ongoing discussions with the library project team, the city has advised that we will in fact need to provide a temporary fire station at the earliest possible time. And as such, an additional funding request to city council is pending. So those are pretty much the 5 variables that have changed since the last time we met. We did this evaluation at our last meeting based on evaluation as a combined public safety building. We made the modifications to lot shape and size to identify that indeed all 5 of the proposals, or 6 of the proposals, if you will, were of suitable size and shape for just a fire station. And further, we normalized the utility services subcategory as well, with the understanding that supplementary heating and energy would be made available to the fire station regardless of what section it came out at. After reevaluating and doing a new tally, the Wells Main Street combination still ranked first. However, given the financial reach that it is for the project, I believe that that has been determined to be too great a reach for the city to entertain. So the next 2 sites that come up are in fact Main and Coons, and just the location on Wells Street. So that's a sub lot, if you will, of the Main and Wells parcels. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the temporary fire station first. We've looked at numerous sites across the city, both sites that were city owned and sites that were required lease or purchase. As of our last meeting, we were contemplating placing the temporary station on the same site as the permanent station and trying to work around it. Since that point in time, we have been made aware of a parking lot, city-owned parking lot on Hope and Prospect Street. And we have asked our engineer and architect, Dennis Ross, to do a layout of what a temporary station may look like on that lot. So what you're seeing in front of you now is the fruit of that request. It includes approximately 3,000 square feet of temporary office space, as well as 5 apparatus bays, 2 separate freestanding structures, both double deep. One would be a drive-through and one would be a back in. And that site would, of course, require plumbing, water, electrical, some minor modifications to the exit points of the building, or of the lot, to facilitate the turning radius required for the fire apparatus. But generally speaking, it looks to be a suitable location for the temporary station. So in terms of phasing and scheduling, obviously the site acquisition for the permanent station is still in the forefront. Given that the Hope and Prospect Street lot is city owned, we would have to have some sort of executive order to cease public parking at that location and utilize it for the temporary station. We would go through a series of investigation, a relatively brief period of design, and a public bid process that we would expect to last through January of next year. So over the next 3 to 4 months. We would then mobilize the contractor towards the break in weather. And in the springtime, we would be mobilizing and permitting the project, as well as submittals, procurement of the necessary materials, set up an installation. Utility connections would proceed into the early spring, and we would expect that the fire department would be ready for a final inspection and an occupancy permit at some point midpoint of the summer. As soon as we got occupancy and inspections on the temporary station, we would vacate Main Street. And then I believe that there is some requirement to salvage some of the existing equipment and features of the existing station. And then it would be turned over to the library crew for abatement and subsequent demolition. And then at the rear end, if you will, of the project, there would also be the requirement to restore the parking lot once the permanent station was constructed and the temporary station had been vacated. So in terms of evaluating the sites for the permanent station, this is the same slide that we had briefed you on last month regarding the Wells Street option and the Wells Street option only. It contains the same pros and cons, which we will likely touch on as we evaluate each of the options that are being contemplated on each site. We have 2 for Wells Street and 2 for Main and Coombs that we're going to look at and try to explain our way through this evening. The first structure on Wells Street is a 2-story administrative structure with the apparatus bays and support building next to it. It features 5 double deep back-in bays. And I believe, you'll have to forgive me, I think it's 26 parking spaces with additional public parking along Wells. Again, 2 stories, back-in bays. The support structure to support the apparatus bays is also 2 stories and will be 2 stories in each of the options that we evaluate. In terms of pros and cons, this is a very simple design, a very simple layout. It provides, like I said, I think it was 23 or 26 spaces of parking. It's centrally located, has good public access to and from the building, and there is gas presently at the site. Although, as I pointed out, it is a limited amount of gas and we could not increase the consumption at this location. Some of the cons are it is a 2-story design, so that increases the square foot cost in 2 ways. One, 2 stories are generally speaking more expensive than single-story buildings. And secondly, it requires additional square footage within the footprint to accommodate stairwells and elevators, which would otherwise not be required as part of the project. As is the case with both sites, both Wells and Main, there's limited places on site for open air stormwater treatment. So we would be dealing with underground stormwater systems. And lastly, there is an opportunity for us to apply for a grant for the project. I don't know a lot about the grant. It was recently introduced. If the mayor would like to speak on it, she certainly can. There's an evaluation process that they go through for each of the properties. And if I understand between the lines, the worse the property is, the more likely it is that we get funding for it. Is that the way it works, Mayor?
That is the way it works. And just so everybody understands there, we have been very aggressively looking at different ways add funding to the library for the long term. I'm sorry, to the library, to the police station. I deal with 2 things almost every day of the week. And so we're talking about the fire station here. So evaluating ways to, to either offset costs for the fire station or to increase for things like soft costs or perhaps to go to construction costs. So we have a couple of things we're working on, myself and MJ Adams and Chief of Staff Danielle Letourneau in terms of different kinds of grants. And I can at any point in time during question and answer, or whenever you want to know, I can explain both of them. But one of them was to use some CDBG funding to add to it. It would not be millions of dollars, but it could be hundreds of thousands of dollars, or even, anywhere from 50 to upwards of that. And the situation, my dinner has arrived. The situation is such that, oddly enough, the way that, yes, he's always a jokester. The situation is such that with the CDBG funding, there's different categories that you can slot projects into, and the one that fits in order to qualify for the funding under the grant, and the one that fits this project the best on either site are cleaning up slum and blight on Main Street and in the downtown corridor. And we have utilized CDBG funds for quite some time now for that very thing. So MJ, at my request, checked in with the state on whether this would be granted or not. We'd be allowed to do it. And she hasn't gotten a definitive answer yet, but there is that distinct possibility. And the interesting thing about this is they evaluate these projects under what the condition of the property is now. And of course, every one of us who knows what that property is can look at this and the next slide or a couple of slides later and understand that it's as they say in the South, ass backwards. So right now, the Wells Street property is considered in fair condition, which means that it is less likely to receive funding or would receive reduced funding based on whatever number we asked for. If you go on, and I'll let Neil proceed in a minute, but just to explain to you, when we get to the Coombs property, that is considered in poor condition and more likely to receive funding or full funding or some version thereof. So it's just something to think about as we move forward this evening, when we think about these options and what might be the better option to pursue, going forward and in response to the RFPs.
So the second option, excuse me, at Wells Street was a single-story structure. The apparatus bays are in the same configuration. They're double deep back-in apparatus bays. The administration, again, single layer, 10,000 square feet. Support space is 2 floors in adjacency to the apparatus bay. The pros and cons, again, single story, simple design. The pros, gas is present, but a limited number of therms. The double deep back-in bays are a little less desirable for the fire station. They can certainly do it, but I believe, not to speak for the chief, but I think a drive-through bay would be preferred. Again, similar comments regarding the underground stormwater system, as well as the grant funding. With regard to the Masaccio property, or 33 to 39 Main and 10 to 12 Coombs, this is the same slide that we had looked at when we previously evaluated the properties. And the developments that we've come up with are a single-story structure with drive-through apparatus bays. The area towards Main Street would be the administrative wing with public parking and fire department related parking next to the building. The apparatus bay would be located to the rear of the site and would allow central flow, fully flow traffic via Coombs Avenue through the apparatus bay with a response to Main Street along the the east side of the site. I will note that the square footage at this building is 20,200 square feet, slightly less, about 10% less than the two-story structures that we're looking at as well. Pros and cons for Main and Coombs. Single floor reduces cost, increases usable area. We're not losing space due to stairwells and corridors. Again, Main Street location provides very good public access. There's adequate parking for the fire staff. The double deep bays are definitely preferred. Response is directly onto Main. It is centrally located. The lot works geometry wise. And in terms of the grant funding, as the mayor touched on, it is deemed in poor condition. So it would be more likely eligible for funding or increased funding. The cons to this particular site, it will be in this configuration a very tight site layout. There'll be very little green space left over on the site between the paved approaches and return traffic areas. It's likely that we would have to make some improvements to the infrastructure on Coombs Avenue. The road is not in great condition. The internal connection, it's difficult to see with the box drawings that we have, but the interior connection from the admin to the apparatus bay is somewhat limited. We can sort of finesse our way through the floor plan once we get a little further along and perhaps massage that a little bit. As I said, the response from the apparatus bay would be out the eastern side of the site, and that is the same side of the site that there is parking on. That's not exactly ideal, but again, it can be something that we can look at further during design development. There is no gas service on the site, and due to the service restrictions imposed by Berkshire Gas and the supply issues that you're experiencing in town, a gas service at that location is not likely. The chief had mentioned in passing, and I wanted to make sure I put it down, that there is a right-of-way on that property for, I believe it's the pizza shop owner, who is the neighbor to the west. He also owns one of the garage structures in the rear of the site. So we would have to look at that closely, whether or not that structure could be saved, and if it couldn't be saved and the right-of-way not maintained, there would have to be some concessions, some compensatory storage perhaps provided to the abutter. Again, if this is in fact the site we choose, that should be a topic that's discussed fairly on and resolved. I do note that there are two other structures on Coombs Avenue that are residential tenant abutters. So that's obviously a concern. We want to be good neighbors. And then, as I had mentioned before, the underground stormwater is required at all sites. That's not, I just want to preface that by saying it's not uncommon to have underground stormwater. It's more that it's an increased cost that has to be accounted for in the estimates. And then second option at Main and Coombs would be a two-story structure. You'd have three back-in apparatus bays along with, two back-in apparatus bays along with three drive-through apparatus bays. And those would be on the western part of the site. Return apparatus traffic would be via Coombs Ave, similar to the last option. The administration is 12,000 square feet on 2 floors, support 1,500 square feet with 2 floors. So total square footage in the building is 23,500. In this configuration, there are 21 parking spots located on the site. Pros and cons to this option. Again, responses directly onto Main, 20 plus parking spaces, the double deep bays and drive-through apparatus. Again, very limited green space on the site. It would be lower site maintenance costs. Similar comment on the grant funding. Poor condition would supplement or suggest greater eligibility for an increase in supplemental funds. Downside to this, two-story design leads to increased cost when compared to a one-story design. Again, there's a net increase in gross square footage because of the stairs and the elevator requirements. There would be a premium to update Coombs Avenue. Again, underground stormwater, the right-of-way to the abutter, the residential tenants as abutters, as well as the limitation on the gas service. So how does this translate to the bottom line? In terms of the size, well, let's take it from the top of the page on our way down. The cost of acquisition for the two sites was $750,000 for the Wells Street site. And Mayor, I'm sorry, but your photograph is blocking my view of Coombs Street. It was 900.
Oh. Sorry. I thought I moved it. I'll go back to the other.
No, that's okay. It was 900. I think it was 900,000. We carried site premium and demolition costs for both sites at $175,000 for the Wells Street site, and I believe it was $250,000 at the Coombs Street site. So the site acquisition and demolition, if you will, the preparation for each of the sites would average somewhere between roughly $900,000 and $1 million to develop those properties. In terms of the cost of the temporary station, we're looking at roughly $1.1 million for the lease and or purchase of the temporary apparatus bays, as well as the office trailers. In addition to that, we're anticipating a cost of fit out and equipment at roughly $250,000. That includes everything from utility connections to the bringing in a new electric service for the temporary equipment, as well as any stairs or ramps that are needed to be provided for access into the trailers. Design and soft costs, so anything furnishing inside the trailers that are needed, another $270,000. And then we've applied a contingency for unforeseens, and also the restoration of the parking lot at the conclusion of the term of the temporary usage for $150,000. So the total cost of the temporary station, aside from the cost of acquisition for all four options, is roughly forecast at $1.7 million. The overall time frame is essentially the same. We made an adjustment in the length of construction based on a two-story building and it requiring slightly longer time than a single-story building. So we're looking at, I laid out the temporary trailer, the temporary fire station earlier. It is a period roughly between now and this time next year. There is during that same time, we would do the design work for the permanent station. We would probably bid it in the fall, late fall, early winter. So we would have a contractor on board on or about January 1. And we expect 18 to 20 months for a single story option. I'm sorry, 18 to 20 months for a two-story option and 16 to 18 months for a single story option. Again, those durations will be honed and refined as the design progresses. And that puts us into the station sometime between the second quarter and third quarter in 2023. In terms of overall cost, we carried the building at gross square foot area times $500 a square foot, so 10.1 for the single story options. We carried, if it was a two-story option, we put a 5% premium on the cost of the building, so $525 a square foot. That translated to 11.6 to 12.3 million, depending on the size of the building involved. We applied soft costs at 25%, If you recall, our original soft cost was 30%, so we took a reduction on soft costs, somewhere between $2.5 and $3 million at this point in time. We've applied a contingency for design and construction for unforeseens, as well as design development, normal expenses. At this stage, conceptual or schematic, you'd be in for 10%. So that's what we've applied to the project. So that is, again, anywhere between $1 million and 1.2, depending on the intended floor path. And we've escalated the costs to the start of construction, or really closer to the midpoint, in January of 22 at 4% per year. So that roughly translates to 6% increase in pricing between now and January. And those all total out to somewhere between $17 and $20 million in cost, depending on the options and what would be selected to move forward with. In terms of the biggest variables, I think we all live these days in very uncertain times. We are not completely sure of the outcome of the pandemic and what it will mean to the construction markets. Everyone is watching the numbers, and we're all crossing our fingers that the aggressive bidding pattern continues. Of course, the time impact of money is always an issue. The longer we wait, the more likely it will be the costs will rise. And lastly, the latent site conditions are unknown. We have not yet put a fork in the ground or done any investigation work on either of the sites that are currently under consideration. So that's always a concern. Mayor, that wraps up my piece of the presentation. I'm happy to turn it back over to you or to Butch, or open it up to discussion at your discretion.
Well, I'll let Butch take over, and you decide.
Okay, going by the agenda, I think the most important piece for pretty much everybody on the committee is the temporary piece. And so I think we should discuss that first. And I would say if you have questions about that, you can refer them either to Neil Joyce or Dennis Ross, who is on board at the moment.
Butch, would it help if I brought the slide back up with the layout?
Yeah, it would.
Okay. Everybody hold on. We're going to fly back through. There we go.
It's blocking me from seeing who might have a question. David?
Change your view up in
Yeah.
the upper right-hand corner there.
Okay. Oh, that was not good.
If you have questions, I think we could probably handle this by, if you have a question or if you wish to speak, use the chat, which is that sort of
Floating view.
bubble down at the bottom of your screen, and just say speak or question or
Right.
not everybody should do that at once, but
You're right. It is trip view.
or just speak up.
Yeah, if I can't seem to.
Can you bring the slide up of the breakdown of the costs for the temporary again?
Go.
Thank you.
Okay. Here.
Is there a question? David, either Davids, do you have questions or about the temporary, or I'm not hearing?
I have a question.
Okay. Go ahead, Jane.
I don't understand this building committee. I know at our last meeting, we formed a subcommittee to talk about temporary sites, and I have never been invited to a meeting. I've served on 2 building committees since the senior center one and the library one, and I've never been on a committee like this. I'm a voting member of this committee, and I was not part of choosing the OPM or the architect or the sites to consider. You set up design review without consultation with the committee and told us what it cost. And now you've come to us with a temporary site, and none of us had any input. I mean, I did not have any input, and I don't know about the others, but I don't understand what our role is. Are we just to say yes to whatever you come up with in some little secret meeting that we're not part of? I don't understand what's going on.
My own.
I would just assume the chief answer. Well, Butch, you can answer, and I think the chief can certainly also answer about the subcommittee.
The committee was brought up in the last meeting, and so it's on the agenda for formalization of picking a leader, a chairperson for it, and setting up a schedule for it. This is informational information that's been put together. Folks don't have to decide anything, but we're trying as fast as we can to put as much information together and move as quickly as we can because of the necessity of the library project. So
Well,
that's the rationale for doing this. So tonight, the subcommittee really starts their action. They'll pick their person, and they can work with the fire chief, and they can work with the mayor, the OPM, and folks. But at least you have a point to start from, and at least looking at a site and some costs. If you don't choose the site, that's okay.
Butch, can I interrupt?
Sure, Chief.
So this particular site, this parking lot, Gene, was brought up since the last meeting. It has been the intent to have the subcommittee meeting right after this meeting. We wanted to wait till this meeting to do the subcommittee and to meet on the temporary. Remember, we were going to meet Monday, so we were going to be talking about this, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. In the meantime, this site was a suggestion that has been made by several people outside of the committee, and as a precursor to the conversation, I asked Dennis to take a look and see would it work? Is it even worthwhile to bring to the subcommittee? And B, how would that fit into the overall project? I also took the fire engines down there to see if the turns would be okay and see if it was viable to even come to you. In the presentation that Neil did to us tonight, there are several options for the temporary, including phasing on Coombs Ave. This, I don't think was brought, or at least was not my intention to bring forward tonight to say, hey, let's vote on this site. This gives us a starting point to talk about the discussion. And one of the things that I spoke with the chairman about, and Neil about, and the mayor about, I think it was today or yesterday, was my hope to have somebody put in charge of the subcommittee, get a meeting, and now that we've identified these couple sites, to go look at it. There are a couple other sites that have been brought forward that aren't on here because they've been deemed as not appropriate for a fire station. And so for a temporary location. But this wasn't brought forward for a vote. This was brought forward as a starting point for the subcommittee.
Well, may I just say that every other building committee that I've ever served on has met every week or every other week from the time we were appointed and talked through all of these things to get it all done as rapidly as possible. And this committee has met 3 times, I think.
Yeah, Gene, and I understand that, and I get that, but the reality is we had nothing to meet on until the RFQs for the properties came back for the permanent site.
But we were not part of any decisions. We did not get to have any input on the OPM architect. all decisions have been handed to us to rubber stamp. And I just wonder what the point of having a building committee is, if that's what we're to do.
Yes, Mayor.
There are miles to go before this building committee gets to sleep. You would not, I'm going to speak, and then if you want to respond, that's fine. You would not have been part of choosing the OPM. If you'll recall, and I agree with you, it's unfortunate that we've had very few meetings, but you'll recall our first meeting was quite some time ago, where we met to organize. At that point, we were dealing with one reality, which was that the fire station was going to be on Riddell Street, and that we had some work to do in order to get that done. And that work that we had to do to get that done was to secure the $2.5 million and begin to clean up that property, not knowing one way or the other whether that was all the cleanup we had to do. The point at which the cleanup did not occur was the $2.5 million, which I distinctly remember, and if Greg, you know, there are minutes to that effect. I distinctly remember saying to you, this is very doubtful. And I have it, at that point had asked for assistance from both Senator Comerford and Representative Paul Mark, both of whom told me this would be a very difficult ask and that they would certainly support us at that time, but that we, the city, had to go to EOHCD, who held the earmark from oddly enough, a economic development bond bill, not an environmental bond bill, and determine how we would get that money. And that was not going to be a guarantee ever. I am sorry that we entered this process based on decisions that were made before I got here and before the chief got here and before any of us got here. But nevertheless, we had a situation that we were having to deal with, is to determine whether that is going to be able to be used as the site, as opposed to someone arbitrarily picking that as the site who was not totally forthcoming with what some of the issues would be doing it. So therefore, I had to start from square one. Square one was telling me, first of all, this is going to be a heavy lift. Earmarks are never guaranteed. I'm only giving this background because it really is important to how we got here. Earmarks were never guaranteed. Something new that I thought, I mean, I didn't know that, but I was willing to try. So I began my conversations with the EOHCD, I don't know, February, March. Long story short, on that piece, it was late January, early February. We were told that the money would not be forthcoming at all due to the financial situation of the that has been brought about by COVID-19. None of us, not one of us, who signed on to this committee, including myself and the OPM and Pacheco Ross, ever anticipated the pandemic or the complications of that, or what the financial ramifications of that were going to be, at least as it applies to both the Riddell Street site and the earmark. And everything hinged on the earmark. It absolutely did, because we only had $10 million in the budget to build this fire station, and we needed. The good news is it was on city property. The bad news is it had anywhere from probably $2 to $4 million of remediation that needed to be done, and we had $2.5 million to deal with that. And from there, we would investigate whether we could do it. So I don't think we could bring anything of substance and consequence. This is not, people do have to understand this. I'm begging you to understand, this is not your average building project. I don't blame you. I mean, these are, other than the middle school, and we all know what that was like many years ago, this is a very, very complicated building project, and was always going to be that way. And it seems like we've been thrown wrinkle, whatever you want to call it, monkey wrench after monkey wrench after monkey wrench. That was the first one. So not knowing that we probably were not going to be on Riddell Street. I also remember that meeting. So it's not like we never met. It's not like people didn't have an opportunity to talk. They did, but we said we are practically starting from square one. And because of the schedule that the library is on, we absolutely have to consider a temporary. A subcommittee was formed from this committee by a vote of this committee to investigate several sites throughout the town that were city owned, so that we did not also have to purchase them, as well as spend the upwards of $1 million for, and at that point we didn't even know either. Chief Strahan had to come up with, through his investigation, of what it would cost for a just temporary structures and so forth. So, and somewhere in there, Neil Joyce came on as the OPM to assist us, and he was in attendance at those meetings as well. So we looked at many, many sites, all city-owned, temporary sites. None of them were suitable. If you want that committee or whoever was involved in that committee to go over that again tonight, I think that would be an important thing to do, because we looked at many, many sites. The interesting thing about the Hope Street parking lot, from my perspective, and when we thought about it, the beginning of this week, or maybe it was the end of last week, it was there hiding in plain sight. So, it's a revenue generator for the city, so that's a consideration, but I've checked on that, and since it is temporary, not permanent, we can absorb that in other ways. So, with parking. So I'm not overly concerned about that. It's not a huge amount of money. Hence, understanding, one, the time constraints we're on, because of the need for the library to at least stay reasonably on schedule, something we discussed last week as well. The chief and I don't stop. We look for the options to bring to this committee, and the one that presented itself through, as Chief says, a couple of suggestions as to, well, have you ever considered the parking lot at Hope and Main, or where it is, on Hope Street. We didn't, and that's just a fact. And I don't know if anybody on that subcommittee back in March or whenever, February, March, that was looking at sites even thought about it, because it's a parking lot. We knew we needed to have a site that was, one, city-owned, not expensive to prepare, had gas, water, electricity running to it, et cetera, et cetera. So, understanding more recent developments and more recent discussions with the library and the need to attempt to coexist with that project and help them move along on their schedule as best as possible while we move along on our schedule. We're here tonight We've heard you. We heard you at the last meeting. We're not saying this has to be it, but I can say unequivocally, we have pretty much exhausted every site that makes sense for a fire station, temporary site, I'm sorry, for a fire station that is owned by the city. It is it's the path of least resistance, yes, maybe one way of putting it. And it is very viable. And I do want to say the importance of having without a temporary, we have a lot of pricing issues that are very, very costly. So I think you will notice, if you recall your finance sheet from the time before, that the cost of this temporary, while still large, and not a figure I like looking at, but it is a fact, is considerably less than the one before. And that is because it is city owned. It can be started sooner, et cetera, et cetera. So we are working very hard to accommodate both library projects, which we have to do, and build a more than adequate fire station that will last us for the next 50 years. And so that's why we're here tonight. We're presenting you with this new information. And as the chief said, it is certainly up for discussion.
And if I could,
I would like us to attempt to move on from here and be productive as a committee. And there's certainly room to discuss that later in the meeting too. This is where
if I could interject for a minute, Mayor. Gene, I feel you. I hear your concerns and sympathize with the concerns, because I think everybody on the committee, is feeling somewhat the same way. If you remember when we hired our OPM, just a little background to refresh everybody. It wasn't made in a bubble. There was a committee that was formed of both city staff and members of this committee that did an extensive grading and interview process when it was chosen, when Neil's firm was chosen. The committee that met felt that was the best option for us, and I personally am very pleased so far with Neil and his firm. But that was done right at the beginning of this committee, and remember, we were in COVID, and meeting was challenging because I don't even think we had Zoom for the city at that point. But it wasn't, it wasn't done in a bubble. There was a committee that was formed to pick our OPM and to pick our architect. So it wasn't just me, and it wasn't just the mayor or so on. So I think that's important to say. Again, I just want to reiterate, I think it's more productive if we have sites for the temporary location so everybody can see it. And so we have a productive day or a productive meeting when this temporary group meets. So and obviously, I'm sure that there's more examples that the subcommittee will bring out. But this gives us a starting point. I hope you heard that, because it looks like I'm freezing up.
I just want to say, Gene, I kind of agree overall with your sentiment. But this project has sort of been built backwards. Normally, you identify and have a site. Normally, you have a budget. We've had neither, and we've gone out and hired an OPM, and we've hired a designer, and we still don't have a budget to do the process. So it's been backwards from the get-go, and the driver has been the library project. Normally, you would take plenty of time, have lots of meetings like you're talking about with full committee, identify your site, seek your funding, and then move to, secure your OPM and secure your designer. That's not the way this was started. We were handed an amount of money that was totally unrealistic for the project. And we were tasked sort of in a way by the previous city council to go find some city-owned property, and it didn't work out. And but in tonight's meeting, we're trying to move forward to the kind of process that you are talking about and that you were seeking, and that is to put together a subcommittee for temporary, and then come up with a schedule for bi-monthly meetings and get on a road and go before the city council on the 10th and present our case for increased funding to have enough money to actually do the project. And the schedule has already been put on the first reading for September for whatever they agree to as a result of our meeting. So overall, I do agree with some of your sentiments there, but it's just been totally backwards and crazy.
And one last thing from my standpoint that I wanted to say at this forum, it is very important that we give full transparency on this project. It's important to me as the fire chief. I know it's important to the mayor. And as we go forward, I really hope that we can change some of the feeling that this stuff is being done in the bubble, because I certainly don't feel that way, and I need you all to help go through this, because I can't do 16 hours a day for months on this. We need help. So thank you.
Yeah.
I'm not criticizing the results of your efforts. I am just saying every building committee that I have served on did pick the OPM and did pick the architect from the very beginning and had weekly meetings. The fact that you have chosen to do it on your own, I can't imagine the burden that was. The committee is made up of a lot of very smart people who can lessen your burden if you just meet with us and let us talk through it. Back in the old days, we had talked about all of the parking lots, maybe in planning and construction as a possibility, but I never got to tell you that. So, that's what I'm saying is you have a great committee here. Let us help you. That's all I'm saying.
I know, I appointed it. So I'm happy with the people that are on here. I recognize all of their talents. And we are now at that point where we are seeking your counsel, your expertise, and asking you to please understand this is perhaps not the norm, but if we begin working towards our goals now, we will be able to achieve all of them. And they're very, we have a lot of goals. Also tonight, we are only just beginning this presentation. We do have a couple of sites that we also hopefully get the chance to discuss, but I'll leave that to the chair. We may need to have another meeting, following this one shortly, because this is an important point. The temporary, this is where we start. If the fire station doesn't get moved on a reasonable schedule, things begin to fall apart, and that is just the reality.
So I think we should move to the next thing, really, given what we've just talked about, which is the subcommittee meeting schedule and forming a leader for that and setting up a schedule for that. And then we can move to setting up a bi-monthly committee meeting schedule as well for folks that have days that would fit into their schedules. Yes, Mayor.
I don't have a problem with you doing that, but I want to make sure Jean certainly had her opportunity to discuss this, but if there are other reactions on the committee with regard to that as a site, I think, don't you think we probably, hi Nancy, don't you think we ought to find out if other people want to weigh in on that particular site? But it's up to you.
Certainly. I can't see anybody is the problem. If somebody wants to say something, they're going to have to chime in. Go ahead, David.
Which one?
Make sure I'm off of mute. Sorry. I think that the mayor made a statement about how we got here, but I think what's more important is where we're going. And we don't have a lot of time. And you know, whatever happens in the past happened in the past, but we have a goal, and the concern is to get the temporary fire station up and get off the property for the library, and then talk about the permanent fire station. So we need to just make every meeting that we have productive, and we need to come to the table, whether it's this meeting or it's the subcommittee committee meeting, with goals and with answers, and we need to move on to the next questions and the next goals and the next answers so we can meet the timeline. So there's a lot of work to do within a year, and it's going to take a lot of work for the whole committee, but we have to set weekly goals, and we have to focus on what those goals are so we can move on to the next questions and the next answers to those questions. And that's all I wanted to say for that. I think it's great. I think it's great that you went out and you looked at a location. That's what we have to do. I'm glad the town or the mayor and the fire chief came to us with a one idea in one location. We need more of that. It's going to take all of us to come up with the answers and to find the right temporary location, but the clock is ticking. So I thought it was great that you came to us with that, and I expect everybody on the committee to come with ideas every week, whether we've discussed them in the past or not. And that's just my opinion. Thank you.
So, okay, is there somebody else like to weigh in?
Yeah, Butch, it said Jarvis. I can weigh in on this part. I don't have to recuse from this.
Okay.
I just want to quickly say to the new build temporary site people, I hope that we won't rehash sites that we've already gone over, because we spent a lot of time out there looking at sites, looking at parcels. We brought them back to you folks, and I know we didn't bring them back in a timely fashion, but circumstances didn't allow that. We need to move forward. We need to move expeditiously on this procedure. So I hope that we just don't rehash and revisit sites that have already been looked at in depth. And time and space is running out. That's all I want to say, because I know the city council is going to be voting, and then we need to have our facts presentable to the city council. I know that's what I want to hear. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Anything to say? Okay. Well, the subcommittee meeting.
Herb Forgy, please.
Go ahead, Herb.
Hi, I would like to step in with Ed on this. We spent quite a bit of time looking for a temporary spot once we realized that Riddell Street was done. And I'm not sure that I'm almost convinced that there's no place else out there for a temporary site. I would like to see us continue along the line of finding out just exactly how much we can make out of that parking lot, and at least have one firm thing that we've accomplished so far and move off in that direction. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Anyone else with a comment?
David Singer.
Yes, David.
Wait.
Yeah, I got you.
Thank you. So, Gene, I have shared the feelings that you feel, but at this point, I think that discussion should happen at a special meeting for this, or maybe privately among certain people, but we have to move ahead. Gene, do you feel satisfied that at this point, with what's presented, you can participate in this meeting and make decisions?
Absolutely. I'm for the temporary site. I'm just.
No. With everything that's been presented, this budget,
Yeah.
the new site, the temporary location, can you move forward tonight?
Sure.
So will you agree? Can we move forward? Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So the first thing we have to do, I thought in the agenda, was discuss where the site will be. So we have three options. Excuse me, we have two options, Wells Street back and Coombs Street. Who's going to lead the discussion about where the site's going to be?
Who is discussion?
I'll do it.
Okay.
All right.
Bill, are you prepared to put up slides?
Which site would you like to start with?
I'll cut to the chase. I personally think that Wells Street is not the right site. I like Coombs Street a lot better. More land. Thank you for doing that, by the way. Oh, there's more land. It's in a better location. We don't have to hassle with the owner. We don't have to hassle with the owners, I don't think, at this point. So I do have a preliminary question, though. What about the other two properties that are the residential properties? Neil, you might know this. They weren't technically part of the RFP. Can we go out now and negotiate for that land, or does that have to go through a formal process?
David, I believe that the most direct question is if we would not. My understanding of procurement law is that we would not be able to enter into a sale agreement with that property in the absence of an RFQ. I have to admit, I am not well versed on eminent domain and what could be done through that process. So I would have to defer back to the city for their interpretation of those requirements.
Okay, thank you. I would be very happy to begin the process by entertaining some sort of a discussion or even a motion that we authorize the mayor to go forward and negotiate to buy the Coombs Street property at the best price that she can get.
I second that.
Butch Mart, if I could speak up, Councilor Jarvis, for a moment.
I thought you had a conflict.
I can speak up on other matters, and I'm not speaking up on this. Who's the chairperson of the meeting and running the meeting? I'd like to know at this point. I believe we were talking about the temporary committee, and all of a sudden we're off in space there.
That's not the agenda. The agenda was we talk about the land first.
The chairperson should have the floor. You.
But David is right. The fire station permanent site location discussion was first item.
Technically speaking, we should have voted at the beginning to deviate from the written agenda, not in terms of what is to be discussed, but the order in which it was. So it's kind of a toss up at this point.
Right.
David, I don't know about you, Butch, but I'd like to accomplish one or the other or both of those things.
Right.
And make everybody had an opportunity to speak about them and share their thoughts, their insights, and whatnot. So whichever order is deemed right by you is the order we should probably proceed in, unless somebody has very, very significant organization.
David is right. We did not change the order of the temporary and the permanent. So the permanent fire station site location discussion is the next item on the agenda.
Which we have a motion on the floor. Can we do something about that one way or the other?
I'm going back to that. And so David has the floor on that item.
I have the floor.
You have the floor. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You made a motion.
I made a motion for the purposes of discussion. The motion could be voted down, but at least we're moving ahead. So I made a motion to talk about this property. It was seconded. Now, you, Mr. Chair, you can authorize everyone to speak about what they think about this motion.
Yeah. So,
can I jump in one question? I just need clarification on in all the commotion, I missed the motion. Who seconded it?
Forgy.
Herb Forgy seconded it. Okay, so is there a vote on the motion?
No, no, no,
Although-
no, 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 you don't
It's
vote. Now
discussion
it's
time.
discussion.
Open for discussion.
Oh, open for discussion, okay. We didn't.
I think that of all the sites we've seen, this is the one that we should authorize the mayor to go and negotiate a better price for.
Okay, thank you, Jane. Is there somebody else that'd like to speak to the question?
Yes, I would.
Okay,
I've
Herb?
got a couple of questions on this, as a matter of fact. When we were shown the paperwork on the cost of the project, there was a $750,000 number on Wells Street and $900,000 on Coombs Avenue.
That's correct.
That's his request at this time. Is that correct? That's not a negotiated.
Herb,
So-
that is the offering that was made by the owner in response to the RFQ.
But that's not the $750,000 price is what we've offered the people on Wells Street.
No, that's not correct.
No.
As
Okay.
part of the response to the RFP, they were to identify a sale price to begin negotiation.
Okay.
The 750,000 and the 900,000 were numbers that were provided by the respective owners as a starting point for negotiation.
That's a starting point. Okay, thank you, Neil. That's a big help. I guess we understand now that the possibility exists that those two houses in that Coombs Avenue are up for sale, will be up for sale shortly. I'm sure that we'll find some way for that to fit in to what our needs may be. And that's it for the moment. Thank you.
I would just ask the police chief to weigh in on both sides. Police chief, the fire chief, I'm sorry.
Enter your attendee ID number, followed by pound. If you do not know your attendee number.
Who's Bob?
I'm trying real hard. My computer keeps freezing up, so bear with me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Two things about the two sites. When I originally voted back the last meeting to authorize the mayor to go into negotiations, that was based off of a public safety discussion conversation, public safety building conversation. I think it's important to denote that as of right now, we're talking about a fire station. And so that changes things in regards to the site because Coombs Ave was not appropriate as presented for a public safety complex, but was as a fire station. If you remember Neil going through the grading criteria that he just did, because Main and Wells was number one, but Main and Wells is off the table, number two is Coombs Ave. So I think that's important to denote as we go into this discussion. According to the ranking that has been established, Coombs Ave is the top one that we're talking about now. As far as the fire department goes, I love the location on Coombs Ave. I like the fact that it discharges right onto Main Street and not onto a side street and then go onto Main Street. I like the fact that it's at the end of Main Street, and I envision this, city-owned, nice building as the first thing you see as you go onto Main Street. So I think it has a lot of pluses that way. I think it's in a great location, and I would welcome that if that was the committee's number one priority, or want to authorize the mayor to go into negotiations for this property. I've been on the site many times. I've been on this Wells Street site. Wells Street is not a bad site. But in this particular case, if we're talking about the standalone firehouse as of right now, I would lean towards Coombs Ave.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to weigh in on the discussion?
Butch, if I could, the mayor here.
Yep.
Chief Strahan, I think he was, I don't know, maybe I misunderstood, but I think he was, the question that I think it was Herb asked was, what is the implication of the two other pieces of property? My understanding is at least one of them is for sale. That is not part of the RFQ. It was a little bit peculiar how the RFQ was put together. Really, only the owners of Coombs Street are selling their property. They are suggesting that those other two properties, if needed, would be available. Budget-wise, that's not in the cards right now, but I think we have ways. We have ways of working with those on the property, and certainly Dennis and/or Neil could address those if anybody has any further questions about that. They are not
Mayor,
per se.
I would actually like to speak up since those two properties keep coming up.
Yeah.
Before they get too heavily involved in the discussion, I think we would like to see if they actually contribute anything to the layout of the properties. If they do contribute, do they make a one-story thing easier to build, cheaper? Do they, does it pay for itself? Before we get too heavily involved, let's at least know that they contribute. That's all.
Okay.
I have a question.
I'm going to ask people to mute if you're not speaking.
I've got a question about the Wells Street property. If that ended up back in discussion, would that make the current owner a neighbor since he still owns the other part of the property? We have a person that doesn't seem to be that interested in dealing with the town of Greenfield. I'm concerned about the kind of neighbor he'd make.
I'm not.
We would only be taking part of the original property, the Wells and Main Street property, if we were on Wells Street. Am I correct in assuming that?
Yes.
Okay. So if we take that part of the property and he retains the other portion of that property, we would have a person or an organization as a neighbor who already has shown some indication that dealing with us isn't one of the things that's at the top of his list, since it took him so long to even begin to get back to the mayor. Could that be a potential for a problem?
I understand what you're saying. He owns both of those properties. They're not separate. He owns both of them. So we would just withdraw. I haven't formally withdrawn the Wells and Main Street yet, but it is certainly, and I will be doing that very shortly. But he proposed himself one or the other.
Okay.
And so we are, if I understood your question correctly, he'll have to figure out what to do with the Main Street property, and he certainly has options to do that.
Exactly, but my question is more to the line, or the comment is more to the line of what could we expect from him as a neighbor when he already doesn't seem to be somebody who's, do we look at potential problems down the road with this guy as a neighbor if we settle on that site?
I don't have that sense. I think in his world, he's interested in selling both of them. It's just that we know now that it's not within the realm of our financial capability, and we can't, I don't think we could ever arrive at a price for both properties that he would be happy with. So he's going to have to go to Plan B if we choose that site.
Okay, the discussion is on Main and Coombs. Go ahead.
I had a couple questions, but I do want to make a comment. Personally, I don't think the owners of the Wells Street property have the best of Greenfield in mind. That's my opinion. I think the Coombs folks have lived in Greenfield all their life. They've had business and they've built relationships all their life. And I feel much more comfortable dealing with a family or a company that is invested in Greenfield. And I don't think the Wells Street folks have invested into Greenfield. That's just the statement that I wanted to make. The question that I had is, last meeting, we talked about the, if we were going to use the Wells Street property, we might have to go into some other type of negotiation because we needed a little bit of more land for parking or a little bit more land for space. Is that still true? If we were going to look at the Wells Street property? Would we, the 700, the lot for 750,000, there was a question of whether we had to ask for a little bit more land, and we might have to go into another negotiation. Is that still true? Part of the proposals that were shown to us tonight?
I think Dennis or Neil could maybe answer that question.
Yeah, I think on the Wells Street, this is Dennis, on the Wells property, there was a piece of parking across the street that would certainly ease any congestion. But I think as the four layouts that you've seen tonight, they're all very similar in parking. They're in the 20 to 26 parking space range. So, you know, if something else became available or was close by, that would be wonderful, but they will work in the configurations they're in.
Okay.
And
all right.
just to follow up on that, Herb, or Dave, I'm sorry, just to follow up on that, the purchase of the property would be defined as the parcel of land as it was presented in the RFQ. And I believe that was limited to only the land on the west side of Wells Street, if that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. And the last comment that I had with respect to Coombs is, well, it might not be the last comment, but I think functionally looking at a fire station, I think it's the best option. I mean, I think allowing the trucks to pull in one direction and get into the building and pull out the other direction, the location that it's right on Main Street, and that it is, as the chief said, it's downtown, but it's not right downtown. I just think the ease of in and out and the location is just gives us better options. I mean, I look at the drawings for Wall Street, and it just looks like everything is so cramped. And I look at the drawings for Coombs, and I look at, we have options at that location.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
No, I was scratching my head, sorry.
Okay.
Because it is just not because I thought David's comments were peculiar. All right.
Okay, anyone else in the discussion for the Main and Coombs property?
Yeah, Butch, this is Jen Stromson, if you can see me.
Go ahead, Jen.
Okay. Yeah, I think, I mean, as I said in the last two meetings, I'm very in favor of the Coombs site. I think, you know, it sounds like it fits the needs of the department and has a lot of the sort of hard attributes as shown in the scoring by the OPM, but also, you know, just seems to have the right sort of, it's in the right location, and it really feels like it would be a great place to redevelop. And I love that it has potential to attract some CDBG funds. Those Sloman Blake funds are really nice to pin down. And I think that, you know, as the mayor said, has the potential to sort of offset any of the sort of cost differential against the well site. So, I feel really positive about this. I've sort of held back because I feel like I've talked about, you know, my preference for this site for a bit. But, you know, I think if a critical mass of us are there, I think we can vote soon.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Jen. Anyone else? Is there anything anybody would like to do with the discussion? I guess since how we're discussing it.
The only thing I would bring up, and I don't think it really matters at this point, but keep in mind that either site, Wells Street or Main and Coombs, have two options, and those are decisions to make, design options, I guess, for lack of a better word. Each one of those properties has a 1-story and a 2-story potential design. So I don't need for you to decide tonight which on Coombs Street, whether it's option 1 or option 2, although there are some slight financial differences that could become very important. I like 17 million versus 20 million. But that's a conversation for another point. I just want to be clear when I'm going into this that, or all of us to be clear that we are simply purchasing the site. We would be simply negotiating to purchase the Main and Coombs Street. We don't need to make a decision tonight about which option is the best one. That's something for the committee to talk about later on.
Mayor, this is Dennis, and you just sort of touched the edges. Please, everybody, these are not designs. These are simply layouts that we're using as proof that the property does or does not work, and that design is far, far away. So all we've done is prove, yes, the property can work as a 1 or a 2-story. We got a lot of work to do, and with the whole committee to get to a design. So please don't think of that as, oh, this is what it's going to look like. We're a long ways.
Thank you, Dennis.
So Butch, I just have a quick question, if I may.
Go right ahead.
So I believe David Singer's motion was to allow the mayor to bargain the Coombs Ave property. And then this would then have been the discussion portion of the motion.
Right.
So, assuming we've reached close to the end of that.
That, correct.
We get to a vote.
Right. So is that how everybody understands it, that the motion was to authorize the mayor to move towards a position of negotiating for the property? Everybody's
Yes.
silent, so they must agree.
They must agree. Everybody's
Right.
on mute, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Why don't you take a roll call vote, Butch, because we can't see everybody.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think the roll call's good. I agree,
Right.
David.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. So on David Singer's motion to authorize the mayor to move towards a negotiation platform with the mayor, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Chief Strand?
Yes. Can you hear me now? I've been trying to speak for a couple minutes.
Yep, we can hear you.
Yes.
But if I could interrupt this for one quick second, I wonder if I could put Peter MacGyver on the spot and see if there's any input from this site from the firefighters, if he has heard any, before we vote.
Well, we just voted.
Okay. For the last 3 minutes to get back on, and this is not working. So, okay,
Right.
never mind.
Okay. Amy McMahon?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Steve Draculich?
Yes.
Yes. Herb Forgy?
Yes.
Herb Forgy?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Jen?
Yes.
Yes. David Singer?
Yes.
Yes. Gene Wall?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Carol Collins?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Liz Gilman?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And David?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Unanimous vote. Okay. Moving to the next item. The temporary fire station discussion.
I have a comment.
Go ahead.
I would like to make a motion that we appoint a chairperson or someone to lead the subcommittee. And so that's my motion.
Okay. Seconded by somebody?
Well, I agree with that. I'd like to nominate David Masperitolo to be the chair of the committee.
Second.
Okay. All right.
Does David agree?
He was a
must
free
have
agent.
been bathroom. That's what happens.
I would agree to that if people would want me to chair the committee.
Okay. So,
Just to be clear, Butch, it is a subcommittee.
It's a subcommittee to
Work with the
work
fire
on the
chief.
temporary fire station piece.
Yes.
Okay.
Who seconded the original motion that the chief made?
I did, Chief Strand.
Okay. So all those in favor, should we go through this again?
Yeah, take roll call votes on all votes, please.
Yeah, no problem. Okay.
I'm sorry, could I just interrupt? Actually, Peter's question, Chief, was who seconded it? You made the motion. He's asking who seconded it. I think that's right, Peter.
Yeah, I made the original motion and then David
Singer.
Singer's the one that recommended who. And I second that.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. So I vote aye. I'm for it. Mayor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Chief Strand?
Aye.
Yeah. Amy McMahon?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Steve Dracula?
Yes.
Okay. Herb Forgy?
Yes.
Okay. Jen?
Yes.
Yes. David Singer?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Gene Wall?
Yes.
Okay. Carol Collins?
Yes.
Liz Gilman?
Yeah.
And the new chair of the subcommittee, David?
Yes.
Yes. Unanimous. Okay. Takes care of that. So, there's further discussion on the temporary fire station now that we have a chairman, or do you want to go to a subcommittee format and discuss this and have a meeting of your own? What would you like?
I'd like to establish a schedule, a regular schedule for the subcommittee meetings.
Okay.
So we could have it. Yeah, I think somebody had mentioned bi-weekly. I'm not too sure how often we should have it, but I would like to have it on a regular basis, preferably the same day and time, if that works out for the committee.
Okay. Do you have a day and time in mind?
Roxanne, did you want to say something?
I just, it might be helpful to remind people from the minutes who was on that subcommittee. Just those of you who are not on it, just so everybody knows. So I can certainly read those off, or if Peter has them handy, I too. I'm a little concerned, and I honestly can't remember how many of us are voting members on the whole committee. But keep in mind, you cannot have a majority on a subcommittee, a majority of the full committee in a subcommittee.
Yeah.
So it looks to me like there is
There's 12 voting members on the full committee.
Yes, and there's 8 people on the subcommittee. So somebody's, well, check my math. 1, 2, 3, 4. No, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we can have 5.
So read the names off for folks if you would.
Okay. Okay, Dave Singer, Dave Moscaratolo, newly appointed chair or elected chair, Steve Draculich, Herb Forgy, Gene Wall, Carol Collins, Jen Stromson, and Chief Strahan and Peter MacGyver. Now, the chief could certainly be your ad hoc person.
Yes.
It would be best if you consulted with, in my mind.
Absolutely.
He would be the advisor to the committee. So, because he's, been researching this for a while, so he can certainly at your first meeting fill you in and give you some ideas about costs and whatever you feel like you need to decide. But we need to cut that committee. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news because everybody was so excited about it last meeting. We do need to cut that meeting down by 3 people.
Peter's not a voting member.
Oh, okay. Okay, good. And
Comment?
Sure, Herb.
We have the members of the original committee, and I don't think there were 8 people on that. Would there be any thought to going back to some of the people on the original site committee and then filling in or reducing as necessary?
I think we already have the names, and it was
Right.
already sort of voted on in the last meeting. It's just trying to get down to fix with Peter because he's a non-voting member, I suppose.
Well, yeah, and that would be fine. It could be 6 members. It's just that you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you could have a tie.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to remove myself from the committee.
Okay, David's out. So where does that leave us, Mayor?
I can leave as well. I mean, I feel pretty good about that temporary solution, so I feel like we have the option to do it. So I would be happy to let everybody else deal with it.
Okay, so I'm counting. So thank you, Steve. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 voting, plus Peter, who's a non-voting member. So just cautioning you, it's better to have an odd number than an even number.
Can you run through the names?
Unless the chief wants, well, no, unless Peter wants to, well, he's not a voting member. The chairperson could break the tie. If when you decide, if you decide to vote on something, he could not vote and then break a tie.
Could you run through the names, Roxanne?
Okay, so right now I have Chief Strahan, voting member, Peter MacGyver, non-voting member, Dave Moscaratolo, voting member, Herb Forgy, voting member, Carol Collins, voting member, Gene Wall, voting member, and Jen Stromson, voting member. So I'm offering that in this discussion as a solution. If Dave wants to.
Well,
yes, Steve.
Yeah, Neil, can you take us back to the slide of the schedule?
Certainly.
I think we need to have the schedule in front of us when we talk about, what we've got to do.
Everybody see that?
Yeah.
Well, you got to get your
committee
going first.
Well, since we really can't make a decision except to bring it to the full committee, even if we tied, we would just bring that to the full committee that we had tied, right? I mean, what difference we really have no power. We're just discussing the temporary station, not voting on where it's going to be or anything.
Right. You're just recommending, really.
Right.
Okay.
And so if we voted and tied, it doesn't really matter. We would just bring that information back to the full committee. That
what would your recommendation be if you couldn't come to an agreement on what it is? In other words, you tied on that. So would that be, and so just from the procedural, you have to work through this.
Mayor, can I ask a question?
Sure.
I was, and she can say no if she doesn't feel this way, but could Carol be the technical advisor from the city rather than actually choosing the site? I mean,
That's actually what I was gonna propose, so I'm totally happy with that. If the mayor's.
Okay, are the subcommittee members happy with that? Does that work for folks?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So.
Can you hear me now? Because my mute is not, okay.
Yeah.
It says I'm muted, but okay.
Okay, so do we need a vote to create you guys now that we've recreated you?
I think you did that vote last time. Well, we have a recreation, I would think so.
Right. Right. So is there a motion for the members of the newly formed subcommittee?
So moved.
Oh, it's just a
Seconded.
motion to amend.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
We'll have a motion to amend the committee members to a new group by reducing it by, what do we, 3 people? Is there a second on that?
Second.
Okay, we got to go through the whole thing again here. So I agree. Mayor, do you agree? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
Steve Strand?
Yes.
Okay, Amy McMahon?
Yes.
Okay, Steve Draculich?
Yes.
Kurt Forgy?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
David Singer?
Yes.
Dean Wall?
Yes.
Carol Collins?
Yes.
Liz Gilmore?
Yes.
And David Marscalello.
Yes.
Okay. Now further discussion. So Steve would like some further discussion on the time for the temporary station. I'm not correct.
I'd like to establish.
I just wanted to, we have, there's a month. I just wanted to point out that we have a little bit less than a month to make this decision. So the meetings need to happen quickly and infrequently, I think.
Quickly and frequently.
Okay. Is there any other discussion on the temporary? Because I'm assuming your subcommittee is going to call a meeting together. You're not going to do a meeting, I believe.
I'd
right?
like to try to call a meeting for Monday afternoon if possible.
Okay.
Holiday, maybe.
Today's a holiday.
Oh, we can't make Monday because of the time constraint, right?
Right.
It's also a holiday.
It's holiday.
Yeah.
That's right. It is a holiday.
Oh, so you have to be 48 hours from, well,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah. 48 hours.
It's of the weekends and holidays.
Okay.
And unfortunately, we are at a holiday weekend, so it'd have to be 48 hours from Tuesday,
From Tuesday.
I think. Right?
From the holiday. Yeah.
It's Thursday?
Yeah, Thursday is going to have to be the option because you will have to be Thursday.
You have tomorrow if you post it.
Well, that's
tomorrow.
true. I will tell you that City Hall is closed tomorrow, so.
Right.
Who posts the meetings officially? Roxanne? Or is
It's usually Bill. Bill is out tomorrow. I could certainly do it.
I didn't know my little face was in the corner like that.
Yeah. So if you want to include tomorrow, then it could be Wednesday. But to be totally safe, I think if you made a Thursday meeting, it would get posted on Tuesday.
Yeah, I think to be safe, it should be Thursday.
What time?
Yeah, Jean may have conflicts with the other library meetings.
Nope, I don't have a conflict. It's Thursday, so just what time?
I was thinking of, late afternoon around 4. Does that work?
Right, that works.
That's a good time.
Yeah.
4 o'clock on Thursday, the 10th.
Okay. Perfect.
Okay.
All right.
How are we going to do that meeting? Will that be an in-person meeting, or are we going to be online again?
That's certainly up to the committee members. The big meeting room in the City Hall would be available to you, but that's a personal choice by everyone. Some of you could be in person, some of you could be online. I think for the purposes of having a open meeting, you have to have it as a WebEx meeting. And then if you guys choose amongst yourself to meet in person, we'll accommodate that. But other people may want to hear what you have to say that aren't even a part of this, but are citizens.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Okay, I think we've arrived at deciding for our full committee how we would like to meet on a regular basis here in the future.
Have we moved on?
We have, I believe, they've
Okay.
set their schedule.
Okay. I'm just sort of helping Peter out here and myself. So we're talking Thursday at 4 for subcommittee meeting. And yes, I would personally love for us to, for my own schedule and my own selfish purposes, to at least try to attempt to decide how regularly these meetings are, and if it's first and third this, or a second and fourth that, or a once a week or once a month or whatever for the full committee. Do keep in mind though that you authorized me to go out, so out, and this is for you, Butch, to negotiations. I have no idea how long that'll be, how long that will take. I'm happy to be part of any meeting to kind of give you an idea of where we're at on that process. But if you have other things that you need to have a meeting for, we can certainly go along with that too. So just keep in mind what it is you want to have. What do you want to accomplish, as Dave Gractola said, at those upcoming meetings? And looks like
Sure. David Singer
has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I recall on the agenda, before we talk about upcoming meetings, that we were going to talk about having to go before the city council. I know there are counselors sitting on this meeting listening to us. I thought that was part of tonight's discussion.
It was actually. It was part of Neil's presentation for additional project funding when he was laying out the budgets for the various scenarios.
What's that?
It was additional project funding that was part of the OPM Neil's presentation to present various budget figures for various property scenarios and building scenarios.
Well, I guess I would like to know as a committee member, since, I'm a community member and I talk to counselors and I try to get their support, which is, I'm sure, why I am on this committee and others are on this committee. I would like to know what the strategy is going forward. I know, Madam Mayor, you're leading that, but what are your expectations? What do you plan to do?
Well, at this point, I assume everybody knows this, but maybe I shouldn't assume that. We have a presentation before the city council at a special meeting on the 10th. So building committee, I knew there was something wrong with the 10th. Building committee subcommittee members, keep that in mind. I honestly don't remember the time that meeting starts, but I believe it was 5:45. So if you're meeting on that Thursday, just know that you have whatever you have, an hour and a half for that first meeting.
That'll work.
Yeah. Okay. So my plan for that is, and we have Liz Gilman and Ashley Stemple and Chair of Ways and Means, President Stemple and Otis Wheeler have been through the finances and how we arrived at the amount of money that we would be seeking. So we will certainly explain that. Liz Gilman will attend that meeting. She's the one who has her handle on, and I mean, I could certainly do it, but Liz is willing to discuss how we arrived at the $5 million figure. I assume everybody can add on this committee, and you see that we are $2 million shy. So I don't know if that's a subject of discussion tonight. But as I mentioned at the last meeting, we can, at this point in time, only bond out for $5 million. So basically our plan is, one, I know that many of the counselors don't have all the information that we have in front of us tonight. So I think it's very important at that meeting that Neil Joyce is always also there, and be ready to, in essence, make the same presentation to the council as he did tonight. Certainly Liz would give the finance piece of it, and I don't know, I think those are the two important pieces.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Tim.
Can I keep going?
Sure.
I don't even know where to begin. I guess, I'm in my experience, I don't know if these numbers are real numbers or estimated numbers. Dennis said very clearly that we're not even close to designing this project. So I guess I have a concern that the city council is going to see these numbers and think that this is kind of the end and it's only the beginning. So I guess my question was to ask you was to ask you in a little more detail. Liz going over the numbers, I don't know how she could add anything to this except to tell the council that there's a certain amount of money that they could bond or spend. But wouldn't it be a better idea if we, just let the council know that we are over budget, let them see this as a general piece of information, and then go out and have you see how well you can negotiate for the land, see how well the temporary committee can negotiate for the temporary equipment, and at the same time, if we need money from the city council, maybe get permission, if we need it, to spend money on the architect and on Neil and on acquisition, so that we could begin to put real numbers together by creating a real fire station, and then go before the city council and ask them for real money. Otherwise, I'm just concerned that it's going to not be received very well.
What were you asking me, or were you asking for comments from?
No, I'm asking you, Mayor. You're the person who's going to spearhead the conversation. So I'd like to know what your strategy was ahead of time, because if you could share that, then maybe this committee could have a conversation about what they think would be the best approach.
Well, I'll start that piece of the discussion to answer your question, and I think Butch and Neil and Dennis can weigh in too. There is a reality which I keep bringing up, which is there's a certain amount of money that we can, additional money above and beyond the 10 million. We can certainly at some point here in the near future get started with the 10 million that we are able to bond for. And I think it's very important to the counselors, because many of them, as I said, may not have as much information as some of us do. And, for what they may have questions about what that means. I know a lot of questions about bonding and what your debt limits are, and all of those were certainly important to the library discussion, and I think that would be part of her discussion to explain that. So yes, she can certainly do that, and she will be part of that discussion. But the reality is, at this point in time, we have $15 million. We have the potential for a total of $15 million. On the other side of the equation, the reality is $15 million is not adequate at this stage of the game to get the type of fire station that we need to carry us through, for the next 40 years or thereabouts. I was asked by Neil and by Dennis to say what am I budgeting to? And I told them to come up with what is realistic. I'd like for them to speak to what was done to get from 20 million to 17 million. As the absolute bare bones fire station. Doesn't mean it's a bad fire station. It just has, since we last talked, we've made some changes in square footage, which I think you can see there. Started out much larger by several thousand square feet. They've, and this hinges on the temporary being built. There are savings to be had there from not having to put both of those properties on the same lot. In other words, temporary and permanent on the same lot, and have to phase in that construction. So the reality, I think, is at this point in time, as Dennis said, we have a long ways to go, but they have to have a budget to design to. We have to have a budget, an official budget, in order to continue to begin doing contracts. Neil has a contract. We would need to discuss with Dennis and create a contract with Dennis for the design. So that is that's why you see that number down there. That is the actual number that we will budget to, or with the understanding that I and other people working with me that I mentioned earlier will do our best to come up with additional funds that will cover some of those things, like those soft costs and other contingencies that we come to. None of those are guarantees. They will not be guaranteed. What's guaranteed is our best effort to get that additional money through grants, but it's not guaranteed that you get them. So we have to have the final budget to budget to, and we have to work within it.
Mayor, could you speak? I think the city attorney has advised you that you couldn't sign a contract with the designer until you had a budget for the project.
That is correct, yes.
So that's why we're trying to seek a budget to work from so that we can hire the designer, so the designer can start to design and tell us what the real cost will be. It's backwards, designing from a budget backwards, but nonetheless, we need a budget to hire him. Any more comments or suggestions on the presentation and the way we're going to put the presentation together for informational purposes to City Council on the 10th?
Looks like Ed had a question.
Well, it was just to follow up a little bit on Dave's end of it. So my understanding, Mayor, would be that we're going to do our best to work towards that 15 million, but we may go over. So within the next couple of years or 2 years down the road, the project may not be $2 million over budget, but it may only be $1.5 million over budget. So is that my understanding, that at some point, a couple years down the road, hopefully the city's in better condition and will be able to afford to bond another $2 million? Is that where you were going?
That would be ideal.
Okay, that's where I thought you were going. I just wanted to be clear on that. I know we're going to try our best to cut costs or save money, but the 15 million is the starting point, and we know that we're probably going to have to come up with a couple $1 million more later on down the road.
And I don't want people to be concerned that at some point we're going to hit a stopping point, because we will keep going forward. So
exactly
to get that money, and it is. I'm sorry. This is. I keep going back to the fact that the 10 million was never a real figure to begin with. It wasn't even adequate for Riddell Street. So. But it's what's in the budget right now, and when I say we can get started, it doesn't mean that it means that we have to go forward.
Right.
With that, just the additional funds that we need
Very good, thank you.
Okay.
from the
Okay.
council at this time.
So is everybody somewhat satisfied the way we're going to approach city council on the 10th?
I mean, could I just say this?
Sure.
That's really informational for them.
Right.
You know, my hope is that the counselors will come with questions for any members that are presenting, that they will take the information in at the meeting on the 10th and supply additional questions, whether it's about the financing of it or anything else that may be of concern to them that is related to financing, because that's really what we're asking them to do. We don't have and wouldn't have at this stage detailed drawings because we don't have a site yet. So you just have to take this one step at a time, but at the same time, we're having to think about this from an overall picture.
Yes, David.
So at this meeting on the 10th, are you the primary speaker for this committee, or can other committee members speak?
I haven't really come to that. I mean, Butch will certainly be there as the chair of the committee. You know, I can't say that has been decided. I certainly want every committee member who can be there that meeting to be there. If I don't know what you're suggesting. I think it's better and less confusing if you keep it to the issues that are in front of us, such as the financials, which is what we're asking them for. So if I had a little more information about what you were asking and who you might think would also be a useful speaker, I'm open to hearing it, whether it's tonight or at some point in the next few days.
Yeah, it's a public meeting. Anybody can attend.
I'm not talking about attending. I'm talking about
speaking.
I'm trying to be respectful of you, Mayor. So if I feel an urge to say something, then you can have the fullest confidence that what I say will be on topic, and it will be supportive and positive of this committee's work and what it plans to do. On the other hand, you might feel like you would like to go to that meeting with you, the chair, and the financial person, and just let the dust settle as it may. So let us know. I don't want to be disrespectful. That's the reason that I asked.
Oh, well, I'm glad you asked. I didn't think you were being disrespectful.
No, I don't want to be disrespectful at the meeting. That's why I'm asking.
Oh, okay. Good. Either place is fine. I don't want you to be either. And I didn't expect that you would be. Yes, my initial thought was let's not have too many people speaking, at least at the point at which we are giving a presentation. There are people there. I mean, my part in it is fairly minuscule, just sort of to kick it off, give us a picture of the timeline, a picture of how we got here, why we're ahead, why we're in front of them. And then, of course, actually, I left Bob Strahan out of that group of people up there speaking. So certainly Chief Strahan, if Butch had something that he felt important to say, that would be fine too. And then Liz Gilman's portion, I think, is.
What time's the meeting?
5:45, is it?
The council meeting, 5:45?
I think so.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. We set on that. A scheduled meeting of the full committee tonight to meet on a regular basis. If so, does somebody have a suggestion? Yes, Mayor?
I didn't know if this discussion about the presentation, if either Neil or Dennis wanted to weigh in on it. I don't know that that the question was directed at them, so, but if they had some thing they wanted to say with regard to it. Any explanation? I guess I'm looking to see if these financials that are in front of us, which is why I think we got to this discussion, if anybody has any questions about them and where those numbers came from before we even take it to city council. Okay.
Mayor, I think the only thing that I'd just like to add is that given the preliminary nature of the project, the lack of a definitive site, the lack of a designer, or a detailed design at this point, the committee should not be misled. These are estimated numbers. They're based on our best guess of what the building may look like when it's finished. And we do not have better information available to us at this point in time. So I just want to reassure the committee that that's where the numbers came from. They are based on historical information for other recent projects and other recent work. And they're intended to be a best guess and an estimate based on what is known now.
David?
Thank you. Neil, thank you for that. I don't have any particular questions because I did understand your presentation to be that. And that's why I started my conversation about the presentation to the council, that because these numbers are what you just said, they're not real. And therefore, there should be some caveating with the council about what this is about and what we plan to do so that they can have the utmost confidence in this committee that we're on it and we're going to do the best we can to bring this in on a budget that works both for the fire department and for the city. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. All right.
Are we at adjournment?
I think we want to set the next meeting.
Yeah, we want to talk about when we want to have regular meetings and when.
It's okay. I don't have a.
I've got one more quick comment to make to what we've just been discussing.
Sure.
And I hope I don't step on David's toes at all here, but I'm wondering if it would be possible for you to get together with the mayor, if you have any interest in that, and discuss with her one-on-one what you might be interested, because it sounds to me that you're trying to make this more clear than what I'm seeing in the conversation right now, that it would be important for the council to understand. I think it needs to be made very plain to them. And from what David was saying, he's got that ability to make it very plain to them.
Sure.
I would be happy to do anything that I'm asked to do.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay. Back to regular meetings. Folks want regular meetings. When would they like them? Set up a schedule for them?
What do you think, Butch? When should we meet?
Oh, every 2 weeks, quicker as we need it, maybe.
Yeah, Butch, I would rather have a set schedule, and even if it's a 10-minute meeting because there's not updates.
There's no such thing as a 10-minute meeting.
What would you like, Keith?
Yeah, the point is that it's been said regularly in the last few meetings that we're not meeting enough. So I would prefer to set up, if at all possible, regular meetings.
Right.
I make
So
a
what
motion.
do you think, Chief?
I'll step back.
Go ahead, Herb. What did you want to do?
I was going to say I'll make a motion that we meet every 2 weeks and to pick a date.
Can we meet opposite the library schedule?
Yes. That would be the one thing that I would be wanting us to do, if at all possible. There may be some times when we have to stack the meetings as it was possible that we might have to do today, but that would be the one thing that I would ask. That we meet opposite, and I honestly cannot remember. Somebody who's on the library committee too, who's here, if you maybe someone.
They meet the first and third Thursday.
That's what I thought, but I didn't pretend to know for sure.
So the first time we could meet would be the 24th.
So
I think this is David. I think it's going to take Roxanne a few weeks to do the negotiations to get back the information we need.
And we'll have a temporary place picked out with all the furniture and everything too by then, won't we, by the 24th? Kidding.
Yes, sure.
Well, if we pick, Tuesdays maybe. I don't have a calendar in front of me, but in 2 weeks, that would be past the time of the information to the council, and I think the council meets on the 15th, 16th.
I can't meet on Tuesdays. I have permanent meetings.
It's going to be a
The council
problem.
meets on the 16th, Butch.
Right. So maybe our first meeting should be right after that, because we'll be coming off the informational session and we'll be coming off of a potential council vote. And so
The library meets at 4:15 to 5:45 on the 17th, Butch.
And they're pretty good about
have an idea.
staying on schedule.
Is that a Thursday?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what happened to meeting opposite that?
Right.
Yeah.
I just saw somebody ask the meeting after that, immediately after that on the 17th, and that's what the date is. I think what are we, the 2nd and 4th? I think I'll make a motion that we meet moving forward on the 2nd and 4th, starting on the 24th.
Second
and fourth Thursday?
Yep.
Okay.
I got to give you.
I have ZBA once a month, but that's fine.
Right.
Is there a time that would work better?
Well, we have to wait.
I would like to start these meetings at 4 o'clock, not 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Second that.
Right.
Do we have to find out if there's another meeting that's already scheduled? Roxanne, you know that.
Oh, well, yeah, it would take me a minute to answer that question because I have to go out of here and get into WebEx. So,
Mayor,
but I can certainly we can make this as a tentative until we say it isn't, because we have another meeting at that hour.
Mayor, according to, and this isn't WebEx, but according to the town webpage, there's a meeting at 9 o'clock with the Board of Assessors, and there's a meeting at 5 o'clock with Sustainable Greenfield Implementation Committee.
Okay, on the 24th? On the
24th.
Yeah, so Sustainable would be a WebEx, and we would have to allow them that time. They've already pre-scheduled. Oh, no, we wouldn't. We have a second line. That's how come we're here tonight. So as long as we set that meeting up, a little bit of a technical thing. As long as we set that meeting, I can go in tomorrow and put it in WebEx conference line 2. So you just decide on a date and time, and I will put it in WebEx tomorrow.
Quick question, Butch. Are we talking about sub or full committee on the 2nd and 4th Thursday?
Full committee.
And I think it would be important, yes, for Dennis and Neil to weigh in on their availability on the 24th. We're going to have to, that's why it's important for us to schedule 1st and 3rd, 2nd and 4th, whatever we're going to do, so that they can be assured that their schedules mesh with ours for those times that we need them as part of the meetings.
Mayor, Thursday nights are okay for me. I'm sure that conflicts will arise, but generally speaking, Thursday afternoon is fine.
Generally, that works for me also. I already have one on the 24th, but It's not until 7, so if we can do an hour and a half, 2 hours, I'm fine.
So if I could do a friendly amendment and say that the second and fourth Thursday at 4 o'clock, starting on the 24th of September for regular scheduled building meetings.
There's a second.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, let's vote it. I'm in favor. Mayor?
Yes.
Okay. Chief?
Yes.
Amy McMahon?
Yes.
Okay, Steve Dracula?
Yes.
Herb Forgy?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
David Singer?
Yes.
Dean Wall?
Yes.
And Carol Collins?
Yes.
Okay, Liz Gilman? Liz Gilman?
Probably off, you know.
Probably having supper.
Yep, I'm
Well,
sure.
she can't. She had a root canal.
Oh,
She's having this. She's having a milkshake.
Yeah.
Okay, and David?
Mascaratello.
Okay, so it's unanimous. It's one. Okay, so that'll be the schedule. All right, next on the agenda is any further old business to discuss? Any?
I think we did a little bit of that tonight too.
A lot of it, yeah. Okay, public comment. There's a moment here for public comment. Is anybody out there on the airways who would like to say something?
They're gone.
They're gone.
Yeah.
Sleeping.
We wore them down.
Executive session. I don't know how we would have one, but I don't believe there's any need for an executive session.
No.
The next meeting will be on the 24th of September.
Can we get a copy of these slides?
Yes, Peter will send those out. I sent them to him, and I don't think he has time between the time I got them and sent them to him, because I asked him to send them to you all. So he'll forward those to you folks.
Yeah, I did not get them.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if we have everybody's correct email. If I give you my email address, everybody on the committee, could you just send me an email and I'll make sure that we build up the master list for that?
Okay, that's great.
I have the master list, Chief.
Okay, if somebody can send it to me, we'll make sure that Peter and I will make sure that we're getting all the stuff that we need to everybody.
Thank you.
that would be a big help, Chief, because I didn't get anything for this meeting at all.
Okay.
So
We
appreciate it.
apologize
Thank you.
for that. We thought it went out
Yeah.
to everybody, but
I understand things
we will
occur.
update the list. Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, 8:32 is there a motion for adjournment?
So move.
Second.
Second. Okay. Do we need a roll call for that?
Aye.
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 Aye. I'm the only one we don't need a roll call for.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.